There's no problem by becoming rich. Take all your money, buy Bitcoin. I say when we sell.
Wake up every morning and say GM.
GM. GM, GM, GM. All right. Today is Thursday. 24th of October, daily levels. So overnight I mentioned, or before I went to sleep, mentioned Bitcoin following some kind of path along here where it would come back and consolidate for a second push up to these highs. So if BTC comes into that area, obviously the blue path's not happening. If it comes back and holds around there, I'll be interested in taking a trade up. But I'm more so watching now for the potential of BTC to hit a lower high. Because looking at it from here, it seems like a first leg sell-off with a strong retracement and most likely further downside to come. Or at the very least, coming back down and retesting that area before forming the bottom proper. This low has been left without a retest. So typically that would mean you'd expect price to come back at some point, at least to retest the bottom, if not to try and go lower. But what I'm more interested in is looking into Solana here. Because are we seeing a shift? Are we seeing a change in the market dynamics? If you remember, last year, Solana starting to outperform was a very bullish sign. Solana was the strongest altcoin, really, of the whole run. And as you see here, when it really started to get moving in October, that was when we had our biggest bull run, biggest overall alt run. We had all the memes starting to run. So now Solana's starting to move. It's breaking out above its previous highs. It's looking good. I showed the volume profile for Sol. Where was it? There. Sol's volume profile from the top. It is moving nicely. Has broken out. Is holding above it. Should be heading towards that liquidity above at 193. And I want to compare. I want to take a look, because is this the run? Because obviously what's going to happen with Bitcoin, if others, not just Solana, but if others start to run and Bitcoin's looking like this, you're going to see Bitcoin do that, probably for at least one more push, which will pull back alts. Now, I actually suspect that Bitcoin's more likely to do a couple of pushes. That's not even done right, but like that, if that were the case. And so you want to be looking at, is the market going off and chasing into stuff like Solana? And is it getting a little bit ahead of itself? So how can we determine that? One way would be open interest. So what's happening with positioning? So for BTC, you can see a big build-up of open interest into these highs. Open interest is at a level now that is, in terms of contracts, that is higher than when we were at all-time high, because we had to squeeze up into it. And it's really at the highest point of the entire cycle since, well, in contract terms, since down here. But in dollar terms, it's the highest of the cycle. Because obviously you'd higher contract levels over here, but price was only at 25k. So there are more positions open on Bitcoin and more value of those positions than there almost ever has been. And Bitcoin has not broken out and has not been able to breach 70k yet. Now, I talked about this on Weekly Outlook, so this shouldn't be a surprise in terms of what's going on with price. What did I mention? I mentioned those options levels for BTC. And we've seen that play out pretty much. So 25th is tomorrow, right? Yeah. So we have a call wall at 65 and we have a big wall at 70. And mentioned that we wouldn't get over 70 till Friday, most likely. And we probably wouldn't go below 65 before Friday, most likely. And the magic of options hits again. So it's almost certain that, and this isn't like a big call. It's almost certain that by tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. UTC, which is 24 hours from now, 23 hours from now, we will be above 65 and below 70. Question becomes then, is Bitcoin going to be able to break that 70 afterwards? So it tried 3 times to get above 69. Was it being, pinned down because of that large options open interest level? I would have less. Depends what happens today. If we see a nice move up today and we're going like that, then going into next week, I think we can break out for sure. Because when you look at some of these big options levels that we've seen, remember back in January, I did the exact same thing. I was getting long, it was over here. I was getting long Bitcoin over here. This was the Friday. No, this was the Thursday, I should say. And Bitcoin was staying below 40 before the options expiry. On Friday, options expired, and go and look. Less than an hour after. Closed just below 40k, because that was the big level, big round number, and then boom, shot off to 42. 42 was our next level at that time. That was our next options level. So we dumped down on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then back up Friday, and away it goes. So something similar may be happening here. But, of course, you can't really tell which direction that's going to be in. It just means that 65 will hold and 70 will hold. So, anyway, I want to compare and look at Sol. See how does Sol's positioning look in comparison to when it started to outperform last. So back in October, you started to see Sol move up in September, push into the highs, and then sell off into a higher low, and then it really started moving. It was the next one to move really after BTC. And throughout that period, you saw not much really changing in open interest throughout these pushes. Positions were building, but then closing off as there was some shorts. There was a lot more shorts on Sol back then. And you could see quite clearly, because remember at this point, this is when everybody was panicking about the FTX, Solana getting unlocked and getting dumped and all this kind of stuff. Right now, we see a big increase of open interest chasing price up into here. So there does seem to be some spot demand pushing this. The spot delta is positive. There has been quite a lot of negative perp delta. So the futures are here and spot is here. There has been quite a lot of perp selling net. There has really not been much net perp buying throughout this range here, which would indicate quite a bit of shorting at the market or selling at the market. Here, this would mostly be longs getting stopped out, as you can see with open interest declining. Here, less so, especially there. Right, open interest is building while there's a lot of perp selling. Open interest building, open interest dropping slightly here. But there is a negative delta for Solana spot, right? Or Solana futures, I should say. You can see this if you put on a aggregated volume and aggregated spot volume, and we do them with the CVD. Cumulative delta, there we go. And we put this onto here. There you go. And this is, sorry, no, coins. Oh wait, no, I'm looking at the wrong one. Open interest. Cumulative delta. Let me put this on here. So spot selling throughout this range, starting to turn. So this push has been led on the market side. So the aggressive side has been spot, while futures has not really followed. How does that track with previous times when Solana was outperforming? We saw a much more balanced market. It was really throughout November where the future started to try and fight it. But a similar setup, not very different to it. And this move, as long as it stays above the breakout point 164, I think Solana will go towards 194. My expectation for price would be like what I posted yesterday, My expectation for price be something like this. If Bitcoin rallies up towards its highs, Sol probably moves towards just Bitcoin to its most recent high. Sol will probably move towards its higher time frame level, that 194. This really is just a catch-up trade, right? Because that's Bitcoin's equivalent. These are the late July highs. Bitcoin has already retraced all the way up to it. It hasn't hit it yet, but it's came right up to its July highs. Whereas Solana hasn't. It's significantly below still. So this is mostly just a catch-up trade at the moment, and would not be something that you would look at and say, oh, this is like a terribly overbought market, or it's really frothy or whatever. It's much more likely to be just a bit of returning bullish sentiment. So I would look at it like this. I would say Sol probably keeps pushing, as people are, I think, going to still try and short it, expecting some kind of pullback based on, oh, it's outperforming Bitcoin, therefore it has to pull back. I mean, not unless you see some low time frame trigger. I would suspect that Sol gets close to that level, then has a drop back, then pushes through it. And then if you have a proper drop back, it's going to come, I think it's going to go for this liquidity before there's any significant pullback. I think any pullback before that will probably be a higher low and get bought. And so if you're looking on the lower time frames, this is not something you'd want to be shorting, right? This is a rising 4-hour trend. Price keeps making new highs and pulling back and making new highs and pulling back, but that's normal. Like, price will just grind higher. And usually it'll end with some kind of acceleration into a overextension, right? So if there's an acceleration after this, that's when you could see, you know, a deeper pullback. But until then, I don't really see anything that overly bearish about this with Sol. If we look at overall positioning, we take a look at Bitcoin and alts. We look at funding rate for both. So Bitcoin funding rate is just right around neutral when you OI weight it. And for all alts, let me see this. Here we go. So altcoin open interest is up, absolutely. Altcoin funding rate is up, I should say. Altcoin open interest is also up, yeah. Since the peak, both have dropped back. Neither have really budged that much in their OI. And altcoin funding has been above neutral for a few weeks now, from really since the end of September. It's been flipping back and forth, while Bitcoin stays right around neutral. So, again, not a bad sign. Sign that the market is coming out of a bearish phase. You're not going to see negative funding the whole way up, and you need to have positive funding to have a bullish market. What you don't want to see are extremes. You don't want to see it fluctuating from negative to positive and to extreme positive in a very short space of time. But essentially, we've seen altcoins outperform into that high. So we had total 3 pushing ahead, and total 2 as well, pushing ahead of Bitcoin into that high. We got a pullback. We came back on BTC into that 65k area. I would suspect that gets tested again. However, I would say it's likely to go up first, more, and then come back into it. And if you see this level just continuing to hold, that's where it'll kick on from. So you've got your lows in here, which I mentioned that I don't like the 64 to 67 area for buying the dip. I would have preferred to see it not go below there at all, or go much deeper. So if this area is going to hold, I would like to see it hold and hold and hold, and then when it's back above 67, 68, I think that's the place to get in for a continuation long. Not before then. I am looking for a long, the one I mentioned for BTC over here, wherever my drawings are. Can't even remember which one it is. Yeah, BTC, one of these. Here we go. One of these moves. I do suspect Bitcoin will take these highs over here, the Monday close of session level. But the way it's dropping off and the way it has pushed into a lower high yet again, despite the nice 4-hour candle, right? This has come into a lower high. This was the high from yesterday. Moved down, moved up into it. It is just a lower high. The 4-hour bands are still holding red. So with that long wick 4-hour, it's going to attract a lot of longs. It's going to attract a lot of people to buy that dip. Despite the fact that Bitcoin is underperforming, especially Sol and a handful of memes on that bounce, I would say it's probably still a bit too early. The highest probability for a bottom, remember I was showing you the days of the month returns on BTC. That would be tomorrow, 25th. Obviously, the weekend is unreliable, so I'd say tomorrow or Monday is the highest probability still for a bottom to form before we rally towards the end of the month. And so I'll be watching with this pullback and see how it goes. I think that money will still flow towards Solana and chase it, but we have seen a significant open interest increase there, which you want to keep an eye on as well, as Sol did this at the last high. So if you look at the 4-hour, Sol did exactly this back in July. Sol just had an insane increase of open interest into those highs. As soon as it took that high out, it completely fell off. I would not expect the same thing to happen here. It doesn't seem to be as extreme. But certainly from these lows, price went up from the low to the peak. Price was up 30%, and open interest from its low to the peak was up 60%. So open interest outpacing price by double, whereas over here we had a 100% increase in open interest with a 50%, 60% increase in price. So very similar structure in terms of how many positions are being built versus the actual price increase itself. No doubt there'll be some longs chasing this. If you look at funding alongside it, funding rate for Solana is back above neutral. It was definitely higher over here on balance than it is now. So that's why I'm saying I don't see this as being likely. I don't see Solana as going to reverse that and make a new low. I do think there can be some kind of dip back inside of this area, right? Because if you're calling this a breakout, right, there's our level. We've broken out. It's held it. Wouldn't be surprised to see Solana move up and move back down and clear out some of those stops below before running. Doesn't have to come all the way back to the lows. It can come down and actually just set what is a higher low. It hasn't set a high yet. So if you've set a higher low, we've made a new high. It hasn't set that high. So it hasn't completed it. It could go higher, reverse. Then you're looking at a higher low to form. That'll be in line with what BTC does. So if BTC continues to hold up and be strong, you'll see Solana pushing on towards 190. I do think it'll get there. I think it'll most likely put in a lower high at 185 to 190, or it'll sweep that and go to 195, 198 before some kind of pullback. Tomorrow is the last Friday of the month, right? So should be core PCE, No, must be next week. It's going to be next week. So there's nothing happening really with data this week. Non-farm payrolls tomorrow. Yeah, and you've got the end of the week, so it's next Thursday. All right. Next Friday with non-farm payrolls. Next Thursday we've got core PCE. So next week a little bit more in terms of the latest economic data, but not for this week. The dollar rally continues, getting to the point where it's significantly overextended on the lower time frames. It's probably going to consolidate above here and below there into the election, just like I mentioned with this drawing, just went slightly higher. And I think that it's basing and waiting for Trump win versus Harris win. Trump win seems to be certainly priced in now. And all signs are pointing towards a Trump win, which, I mean, people on the right are celebrating this. I think it's interesting because obviously Harris is a terrible candidate and it seems like Trump is going to win. But the last several, I don't know how many, like 3 or 4 elections in a row, it's been kind of the unexpected candidate. Trump 16 and Biden in 2020, they were not the expected winners. I guess in 2012, people did expect Obama to win. This is probably the last 2 elections going to 3, so I wouldn't necessarily have massive confidence in polls and in even prediction betting markets because they haven't been super accurate in the past. However, I mean, it's hard to look at it and think that people actually want Kamala Harris to be president. It's funny. But then you never know. There's a certain amount of election votes that are just going to go to one side or the other. That'll be the big thing. That it still is the big thing. And if you're looking at like stocks, they've had their first pullback out of this consolidation. And the closer we get to the election, the less movement you should really see. And if anything, you drift a little bit lower because people don't want to carry risk going into an uncertain event like an election. How that will translate into crypto is uncertain. I think crypto's already had its Trump run. It's priced in a lot of it. And I think it's going to most likely wait until the actual election itself before having its next move, which is, I think, part of this path. Part of this path would see Bitcoin just remain in this range until the election, right? Because it's very bullish if Trump wins. If Trump doesn't win, it'll react probably negatively initially. But there maybe is not a reason for it, as long as it holds above this area here, there's maybe not a reason for it to break down in that meantime. And if Bitcoin doesn't break down, if Bitcoin consolidates after a run up, that's when you see altcoins getting their catch-up trades like Solana. So I'd say that's how I'm thinking of it right now. Bitcoin probably bottoms out today or tomorrow, and starts to move up towards its highs again, which allows Solana to push towards its 191, 193 highs. And Bitcoin then stays in a consolidation until the 5th of November, until the election. And that is it. As for the rest of the alts, join me today, 4 p.m. UTC. We will do altcoin requests live, GM.